"May I play for a piece of food?" They laughed, until they heard her piano genius. It was a cold February night, the kind of cold that gets inside your coat and stays there. The streets were wet, the lights from the shops were blurry in the sleet, and most people were hurrying home to somewhere warm. A young girl was not hurrying anywhere. She was walking slowly, because she did not know where to go. Her name was Nadia. She was 19 years old. Her coat was old and too big for her, the kind of coat you find at a charity shop when you have no other choice. Her shoes had a small hole near the left toe. Every few steps, she could feel the cold wet of the pavement through it. She had been walking for over an hour, not because she had somewhere to reach, but because standing still in the cold felt worse. She had arrived in the city 4 days ago with a small bag, 42 euros, and nothing else. No job, no family here, no plan. Not really. She had come because the town she grew up in had nothing left to offer her. The factory had closed. Her father had been gone for 2 years. Her mother cleaned guest house rooms 6 days a week for a wage that barely covered their rent. When Nadia left, her mother had held her hands for a long time without saying anything. That silence said everything. So here she was, a city she barely knew. And tonight, she was hungry. She had passed the restaurant twice already before she stopped in front of it. It was not a fancy place, but it was warm-looking. Through the big glass window she could see people eating, candles on the tables, a bar in the back. She could see steam rising from plates. She could almost smell the food from the street. And then she saw it. In the corner of the room, near a window, there was an upright piano. Old, dark wood. It looked like nobody had touched it in a long time. There was a small decorative plant sitting on top of it. But it was a piano. And Nadia knew pianos. She stood outside for a moment. She thought about what she was about to do. She knew how it would look. She knew people might laugh. She went inside anyway. The warmth of the room hit her immediately. A man near the door, one of the staff, looked at her with that particular look. The one that is not quite rude, but is not welcoming either. The look that says, "You do not belong here." She spoke quietly. She said she had noticed the piano, and she would like to play it, if that was allowed, in exchange for something to eat. Even just bread. Anything. There was a pause. Then someone at the bar laughed. Not a mean laugh exactly. More like a surprised one. A man in a suit near the window smiled to himself and went back to his food. The staff member looked at her for a second, then walked to find the manager. The manager came out from the kitchen. His name was Roberto. Big man, wide shoulders, apron dusted with flour. He looked at Nadia the way people look at problems they are about to deal with quickly. He opened his mouth to say something, but he stopped. There was something about the way she was standing. She was not embarrassed. She was not nervous. She was just waiting. The way you wait when you have already decided you are not going to leave without trying. Roberto looked at the piano. He looked at her. He shrugged. In that way Italians shrug when they decide something is not worth arguing about. And he waved her toward the corner. She sat down on the bench. She adjusted it, moved it an inch forward. She lifted the cover off the keys slowly. Some of the keys were slightly yellowed. She pressed one softly, middle C, just to hear the tuning. It was a little off, but not badly. Good enough. She placed both hands on the keys. She closed her eyes, and then she played. She began with a Chopin nocturne. It is a piece that has been played by thousands of pianists in concert halls around the world. But the way Nadia played it that night, in a mid-range restaurant in February, in a wet coat with a hole in her shoe, it did not sound like a performance. It sounded like someone speaking privately, like something she had been keeping inside for a long time and was finally letting out. The first table went quiet around the third bar of the music. A woman put down her wine glass. A couple who had been talking leaned slightly toward each other, and then toward the piano, without even realizing they were doing it. By the time she reached the middle of the piece, the whole restaurant had changed. Not dramatically. Nobody stood up or made any announcement. It was quieter than that. Conversations just slowly stopped, one by one, like candles going out in a gentle wind. People turned. They looked toward the corner where this girl in the oversized coat was sitting with her eyes closed, and her hands moving like she had forgotten anyone else was in the room. Roberto stood in the doorway of the kitchen. His arms were crossed. He was not moving. When she finished the nocturne, she did not stop. she moved directly into something else. But this one was different. This was not Chopin, not anyone famous. This was hers. She had written it the winter her father died. She had no piano at home at that time. The old instrument in the family house had finally given up. 3 keys completely broken, the pedal stuck. So she had written it in her head, note by note, sitting in the kitchen in the dark after her mother went to sleep. She had practiced it only in her imagination for months, until a neighbor let her use their keyboard for an afternoon, and she played it through and found that her hands already knew every note perfectly. It was not a technically complicated piece. It was not trying to impress anyone. It was just honest. It was the sound of missing someone, of being 18 years old and not knowing how to carry something that heavy, of sitting in a cold kitchen in the dark and deciding to stay anyway. The woman at the corner table was crying. She was not making any noise, just sitting very still with tears on her face, not even trying to wipe them away. A group of people at the back, they had been celebrating a birthday when Nadia walked in, laughing and taking photos, had gone completely silent. One of them had slowly moved his chair so he could see the piano better. He did not notice he had done it until later. A man near the bar, older, gray at the temples, the kind of man who carries a certain quiet authority, had taken out his phone. He held it up carefully so the small screen was facing Nadia. He pressed record. He did not say anything to anyone. He just held it there. She finished. She lifted her hands from the keys and let the last note sit in the room for a moment. Then she opened her eyes. The restaurant was silent. Not the uncomfortable silence of waiting for something to happen, the other kind. The kind that comes after something real. Then someone started clapping. Then the whole room. Nadia turned on the bench. She was not smiling, not performing. She just looked at Roberto, who was still standing in the kitchen doorway. She was still waiting for her answer. Did she play well enough? Would he feed her? Roberto did not give her bread. He brought her a full meal. Pasta, soup, a small piece of grilled fish, a basket of bread. He sat across from her while she ate. Or at least he stood nearby, arms still crossed but differently now. And he asked her where she learned to play like that. She told him the truth. She said she had no teacher. She said there was a piano in their house that a neighbor had given her family when she was small, and she just figured it out. She said she used to practice at night after everyone was asleep because she did not want to disturb anyone. Roberto was quiet for a while. Then he said she could come back tomorrow night, if she wanted. He would give her dinner again, and he would pay her a small amount. Not much, but something. The man with the gray temples came over before she finished eating. He introduced himself. He taught music theory and piano at a conservatory in the city. He had been coming to that restaurant for years and had never heard anyone play that piano. He asked if she had ever done a formal audition anywhere. She said no. He handed her a card and told her to come to the conservatory on Thursday. He said there was a scholarship program for students who could not afford the fees. He said she should come and play for them exactly the way she had played tonight. No preparation, no rehearsal, just the same way. She took the card. She looked at it for a long time. The man who had recorded her posted the video that night. He wrote almost nothing in the caption, just the name of the restaurant, the date, and the words. She asked to play for food. I will never forget this. That was all. By the next morning, it had 50,000 views. By Thursday, it had passed 2 million. People shared it all over the world. In comment sections in different languages, strangers wrote things like, I don't know who this is, but I watched this 4 times. Or, I was having a terrible week and this helped. Or simply, wow. Some people cried watching it. Some people sent it to their mothers. Some people watched it late at night when they were alone and needed to be reminded that human beings are capable of something beautiful. On Thursday, Nadia went to the conservatory. She was nervous, though she did not show it much. She walked in wearing the same coat. She sat down at a full grand piano, the nicest piano she had ever touched in her life. And she felt, for just a second, a kind of joy that was almost painful. She played the Chopin. Then she played her own piece. Then they asked her to play something she had never seen before, just reading from a sheet. And she did that too. 3 people were sitting in the room listening. When she finished, they were very quiet. Then the head of the panel said, "How soon can you start?" There is a version of this story that focuses on the happy ending, the scholarship, the viral video, the applause. And yes, all of that happened, and it was real, and it mattered. But the real story is not the ending. The real story is what came before. It is the thousands of nights she practiced alone in a cold room while everyone else slept. It is the music she wrote in her head when she had no instrument to play. It is the grief she turned into notes because she did not know what else to do with it. It is the decision to walk into that restaurant on a wet February night, tired, hungry, not knowing what would happen, and ask anyway. Most people would not have walked in. Most people would have kept walking, head down, hoping for something easier. Nadia walked in. She sat down. She closed her eyes. She played the truth. And the room went quiet. Because the truth, when it is played honestly enough, always does that. She still plays with her eyes closed. Even now, in the conservatory, with teachers and other students watching, she closes her eyes. Her professor once asked her why. She said, "Because the music is not for the room is just where it happens." A true life story. Written in third person